Well, who's making sure you're always paying the least amount of tax? That's a conversation you can have with the prospect. But think about that. Automatically, that just raises a red flag in their head. They're like, oh my God, I'm missing something. What's going on? How come nobody's talking to me about taxes? And they don't. Because if they were, they wouldn't be losing 20 to 30 to 40%.
Joined by Mike Canet, one of our advisors here at Impact, who is really a wealth of knowledge, and you convey that wealth of knowledge to a lot of our advisors that we have here. I want to jump right in because we want to take advantage of your knowledge about taxes. And before we can do that, I think we want to get into just a little bit of background about how you kind of got to where you are in your financial practice, and ultimately how you wound up in our hot seat today.
As sick as it sounds, I truly love taxes. It's one of the gray areas that are still available to us. Everything is so black and white as far as planning goes. Taxes are one of the things you can still manipulate to an advantage for your clients. And I started out, I think, as a typical accountant. I was doing taxes. Literally, I was driving around. I had a little portable printer in my car in the late '80s, and I was driving around to people's homes doing taxes out of my car, kind of like some of these insurance guys do, going to people's house, which is just insane. Because I mean, what do you get to see, 4 or 5 people? But so I was doing taxes. Decided to go to law school. Went to law school. Decided I really loved taxes. Went back, much to my wife's chagrin. When I told her I was going to school, she thought it was for 3 or 4 years. Went back and got an LLM in taxes, so a master's degree in taxes, and it just kind of morphed into that. Came out of law school, started working for an estate planning firm. Trust mill. I mean, literally, it was, if you don't go get a revocable living trust today, you're going to, everything's going to go, they're going to take everything, your creditors. I mean, it's just going to, every typical sales pitch you've heard about those. Did that for a little while, but it was, it became obvious pretty early that they didn't want me to practice law. That I was it was a little unsettling at first. It turned out I was a salesman with a $300,000 law degree.
Mm-hmm.
And, I did want to do some taxes. They wouldn't let me do the work. So I started moonlighting part-time at this firm doing tax preparation. And it turned out the firm was using the tax return as a loss leader to bring in investments. And that's kind of how it evolved. I worked for them, got my licenses, worked for them for about 4 or 5 years, then bought them out. They were the broker-dealer side of things, and I decided that I didn't like that relationship. So I wanted to be a more holistic planner, a more holistic approach.
Yep.
And, that was back in 2003. Here it is 20 plus years later. It's turned out to be a very, very smart, successful decision.
The Savvy Investor Podcast is where people can find you. That's on YouTube as well as
right.
Podcast, wherever you can get your podcasts. What jumps out to me is kind of your route to getting here is a financial advisor watching this right now and listening to this is probably a financial advisor first and thinking about trying to incorporate taxes into their policy. Where you were a tax guy and saw the financial advising field and said, whoa, this is an opportunity here.
Well, I would take it a next step is that I recognized early on that I was a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our industry, what happens is most people become financial advisors of some sort, and they don't even think about the fact that this is a business. The fact that they're a business owner is kind of irrelevant. They're a financial advisor. And I think that's a big mistake. You need to learn how to run a business like a business. But yeah, the ability to bring to the table the financial side and the tax side, we have from day one, our firm has grown from, typical small little practice. I think the first year I brought in, $1 million and it's now we're bringing in 100 million plus a year. I have 27 employees. I have 7 other financial advisors. And one of the things I get all the time is that, Mike, we can't incorporate taxes into the practice because, you have a master's degree. Well, the reality is, my 7 other advisors, they don't have a master's degree. The $100 million that we bring in this year, by fluke, I might be responsible for 2 or 3 million of it. So it's not like I'm sitting down with clients and doing advising. I don't do that. I run a practice and I have 7 other advisors that do it. And they all give tax advice. They all do tax planning. It's all tax strategies. And the average advisor, I don't know what your ticket is, whatever, what your average client is.
Yeah.
Our average client, is 1.6 million. So we attract a larger net worth client because we're talking about taxes as part of the planning process. People are hungry, especially over the last decade, as Donald Trump became president and started honing in on the taxes. And, that whole thing, there was this big hoodoo about, I'm not trying to be political, but people attacked him about paying 0 taxes. Well, he pointed out rightfully so, Yeah, that just means I'm using the tax codes. It's
Playing
not
the
his
game.
fault. Yeah, it's not his fault. They made up stupid tax rules that he could take advantage of. But I'll tell you what, my job as a financial advisor, and quite frankly, your job, it's not just to create an income stream. It's not just to do an allocation. It's to put more money in their clients' pockets. Why would you allow them to lose 20, 30, 40% of their revenue every year to taxes when it's an option? That doesn't make sense to me.
You're touching on a lot of my talking points. My bingo card is lighting up right now.
Okay.
And one of the first things you said about that you loved about tax law was that it's still gray.
Yeah.
And when I was doing my research before I sat down with you, I'm reading over this and I'm like, my goodness, all this is so gray. It's so like there's so many landmines that a financial advisor who may not have that law degree feels like they have to look out for. So is there any kind of advice that I guess when you have your advisors that are underneath you that are faced with those same sort of issues of how do I talk about this with clients without stepping in it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I run a group, a large group. I have about 20 advisors that I consult with. But the fact is that you only need to be like a paragraph ahead of the client, right? Because as long as you recognize that there's issues, you can say to the client, here's an issue that we need to address. And when the client says, okay, what do we need to do about it? Well, I want to do a little research. The rules just changed. The rules are getting ready to change. Whatever story you want to tell, you don't have to know all the nuances as the advisor. You just have to recognize that there are issues. And it's not like every single client comes in with 1,000 different issues that are unique. Just like how to create income streams, there's really 3 or 4 ways to create an income stream, and everybody knows them. There's a few ways to invest money, but everybody pretty much does the same thing. Well, that's the same thing as taxes. It's not like you have to know 1,000. It's like 70,000 chapters or 70,000, 700,000 pages. I don't know. The tax code is crazy.
Yeah.
You don't have to know the tax code. I mean, if you stack the tax codes up in front of us, the people wouldn't be able to see us. You know how much of that tax code I know? That.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to even know that. You need to know that. And really, you just need to know that there are issues. And once you can spot the issue, you can have that conversation with the client. And it's, Social Security. They want to know how to avoid tax and Social Security. Well, that's a simple process. Capital gains, how to take RMDs, or Roth conversions. I mean, really, is there a whole lot more than that people typically have to address? Well, the answer is yes, there are other things you can do, but even in my practice, as much as we do here with talking about charitable remainder trusts and opportunity zones and 1031 exchanges and ING trusts and deferred sales trusts and installment agreements and all the things that are available out there, the reality is 99% of the clients never do any of it. But the fact that you can talk about it,
Yeah.
that's huge. That is absolutely huge because it sets you apart. I mean, here's the average advisor. Average advisor says, "Hey, I'm going to allocate your money to create your income stream, and I'm going to put some money into investments for growth, and we're going to have a safety bucket, and the typical bucket approach, and then every month that client gets a statement, and on the statement it says, don't talk to me about taxes." And if you ask that advisor about taxes, whoa, that's not my job. Go talk to somebody else. And he sends you to some CPA that he knows, that they have some sort of referral system going back and forth.
Yeah.
And the CPA says, oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll take care of your taxes. Come on in. Let me do your taxes. And when you go in to get your taxes done, you ask them a bazillion questions. I'm too busy to do that right now. Come see me after tax season. We'll have that conversation. Well, the CPA tax season, the enrolled agent, H&R Block, go get advice from those guys, are Liberty Taxes. I'm not trying to, they may do a great job of putting numbers on a page. They're historians. All of them are historians. And so you go to that CPA, and their tax season ends October 15th. So you go to that CPA and say, hey, I need help. I'm on vacation.
Yeah, it's the holidays now.
Yeah, I'm on vacation, the holidays, I have to do my continuing education. And before you know it, it's January 1st, and it's too late to do any tax planning for that year, right? Because it has to be done during that year. And there's some people out there, if you guys work with Jackie Campbell, she's a different breed and she's fantastic. But most of the CPA firms out there don't want to be proactive. But even still, you get your tax work done, and you ask that guy some questions about estate planning, and first thing out of his mouth, oh, don't talk to me about estate planning. Go talk to this attorney. Well, that attorney is really great about estate planning, and you have this circular thing going on because if you ask him about any of your investments and how they should be structured, oh, no, don't talk to me about that. So what we do that's different that I think too many people miss the boat, and one of the things that we teach, Impact does this as well, that we teach the idea of having a holistic approach. And one of my favorite things to say to people is that, if you went to an advisor and the advisor told you that I'm going to invest your money And every year you're going to lose 20, 30 to 40% of your revenue right off the top. Who chooses that as an approach? I mean, if they told you up front that you're going to lose 20 to 30% of your income every single year, would you choose to do that? The answer is absolutely not. Absolutely. Why would you lose 20 to 30%? Because you don't have to. And that's what we teach in my practice. That's what we do working with impact advisors. But that's to me what a true financial planner should be doing. Always figuring out how to take care of the client, and part of that is taking advantage of the tax rules.
It feels like a no-brainer almost as a financial advisor to incorporate taxes into their.
Well, again, I mean, if you can have a conversation with, I mean, think about this. If the conversation you have with the client, the prospect, if you say to that prospect, when you come in to see me, bring in your tax strategy that your advisor put together for you.
And they're
going to be like, what are you talking about? Well, did your advisor discuss with you a tax roadmap, how we're going to make sure you're always in the lowest tax bracket possible? They're going to say, no, I don't have that. Well, then how about your CPA? Who does your taxes? I do them myself or whoever does them. Fine, bring in that tax strategy. Well, who's making sure you're always paying the least amount of tax? That's a conversation you can have with the prospect. But think about that. Automatically, that just raises a red flag in their head. They're like, oh my God, I'm missing something. What's going on? How come nobody's talking to me about taxes? And they don't. Because if they were, they wouldn't be losing 20 to 30 to 40%. So I think every advisor, I don't care who you are, I think you have the opportunity. The biggest obstacle is you, right? I mean, you're the obstacle. You are afraid, and we talked about this earlier. You know, you're afraid to try new things. You know, it's like, you know, somebody puts a plate in front of you, food you've never seen. I don't want to taste it because I've never seen it before. This is the same thing. You know, you have to be willing to go outside your comfort zone. But once you get out there, it's amazing. I mean, the first time you sold an insurance policy, you were afraid. You were nervous. The first time you did AUM, you were nervous. You're afraid. The first time you sold life insurance, it was a scary proposition for you. But you know you can do those things, and I promise you, with or without a little bit of coaching, you can do these things too. It's just a matter of being willing to take that step. You know, estate planning is a good example. Estate planning, people think you have to be an attorney. No, you don't have to be an attorney. I mean, not that I advise you go use LegalZoom, but those LegalZoom guys are all over the place. Use our product. You see internet and TV commercials all the time for estate planning. Well, you can do the same thing for your clients, simple plans, but you can do, if you can fill out an annuity application, you can fill out the template for an estate plan that some software company will put together for your client and print it out. You're not the lawyer. You didn't do it. It says it's being done by some law firm, but you just provided another service. And for us, this holistic approach, you know, we call it a stickiness factor.
Yeah.
My clients come to me, yeah, they get the income planning that most advisors do. They get the asset allocation. They get the risk management. Everybody does that. But we do estate planning. We do tax strategies. We do tax planning. I mean, implementation. We actually do the tax returns for the people. We do risk management, homeowners insurance, automobile insurance, long-term care. We don't sell any of that stuff. But here's the deal. Because I bring all that stuff to the table, I charge my clients a fee. In addition to if I sell them an annuity, in addition to if I'm doing AUM. As a matter of fact, you can't even become a client of mine unless you pay me a fee. My minimum fee is $12.95 a year. We bill out over $300,000 every January to financial planning clients. And I was afraid to do it. I'm just like everybody else. I was afraid to get naked in front of the doctor. I didn't want to see what I looked like naked. And so when I first did it, I charged $250. Well, now I'm stuck with, I don't know, 100 clients at $250. I'd like to shoot myself. You know, as I've gone through my career helping other guys do this, you know, they're afraid too. But once they do it, it's a simple process, and their numbers start out at 500, then they go 750, 1,000. You know, one of the guys that I work with is charging $2,500 every year just to become a client. And people are hungry for this. People want this service. People need this service, and we're just afraid to offer it to them because we're afraid that we don't know enough. I promise you, all you have to be is one paragraph ahead.
I talked with an advisor, and he was a member of your PMG group, and taxes have kind of become something much more prominent in his practice. And he said, you know, hey, it's kind of unlocked a higher echelon of clients.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I said earlier, that, you know, if you go look at your book, and I'm big about knowing your numbers and your average client size and all that, you know, where your funnels, your marketing funnels are producing. So, you know, we talk a lot about that. And that comes from the business side, being a business owner. But when you look at your client size now versus what your client size will be once you start implementing tax planning into your practice, it's just exponentially huge. Like I said, our average client's about 1.6 million. And it's not because I'm better looking or I'm smarter. That really isn't. That's not it. The fact is that we bring it to the table a more holistic approach, and people are afraid of taxes. People want to stop paying the government. The government, and I don't care if you lean left or right. I mean, when Republicans are in control, they spend like drunken sailors, and the Democrats piss and moan. And when the Democrats are in control, they spend like drunken sailors, and the Republicans piss and moan. Either way, they're not a good steward with our money, right? I don't want to give them any of my money. Why would you want to give them yours? Why would you want your client to be in a position where they have to give them any of theirs? And you as the advisor, especially for those that are calling themselves a fiduciary, why would you not take advantage of the opportunities that are before you? You add another stream of income to your practice. You add an incredible referral service, because these clients come in and they experience something they've never had before. Because I promise you, once you sit down with them and do a tax strategy, and you do an estate plan, and you look at their, the risk that they have with homeowners insurance and automobile insurance, and and you do a whole plan, they've never experienced that before, and they tell their friends. And that's important. 40% of our clients come from referrals. Think about that, 40%. And that's not because we have the best returns. We don't. We have attractive returns, but it's not like the stock market does 20 and we do 50 every year. That's not what happens. It's not because we have the best annuity, because everybody has the same annuity I have. It's not because I'm a better salesman. I close 25% of the people I sit in front of. So it's not like we're remarkable in that perspective. It's because we offer a unique service that most advisory firms won't do.
And I could see the value from the referral standpoint of just the average person talking to their neighbor, and they can say, well, my guy does that.
Right.
Your guy doesn't do tax. My guy does taxes
Yeah.
for me. And it's, well, what's your guys' number? How do I get in touch with him?
Well, it's just like, it's little things. I mean, this was a snowball effect, right? This was snowball effect. I had a client come to me, and he had a business. It was a tire store. He had a chain of them in one of my office areas in Maryland, and he had a chain. I think there were 7 or 8 of them, and he wanted to sell them, but he had no basis. So meaning that he was going to pay a huge amount of capital gains, and it was about a $30 million deal. And so he was about 55 years old at the time. He was ready to exit. And so he sat down, and he heard us on the radio, right? I mean, so he sat down and had a conversation with us. And what we did was we set up a very specific type of trust. We had him he and his wife gifted the business to his parents, to his dad specifically, because his dad was 91 years old. His dad owned the business. Now, my client still got paid to run the business, so almost no money went to dad, but dad owned the business. When dad died, son got a step up in bases, was able to sell that business and pay 0 capital gains tax on it. But that's what a holistic planner brings to the table. That's what tax planning is all about. And you think about that. That guy came to me not because I had a better annuity or because I could invest his money in the stock market. He came to me because I told him I could show him how to pay 0 taxes on the sale of his business. That's why tax planning is so important.
Do you find that now I see why you love taxes, because it's almost like a puzzle, and like being able to kind of
It's not almost, it is a puzzle, and it's putting the pieces together.
So with that in mind, then, do you feel like, I don't know, I mean, what's the hardest part? Being proactive and being able to look down the road and see, I have a client that's going to face this problem in 10 years, whether it's RMDs or they want to sell a business or something like that, and I don't offer taxes. Well, you're missing an opportunity.
Huge.
But that's the key component of tax planning, it feels like, from my perspective, is being proactive and you said being one paragraph ahead of the client, but just thinking down the road and taking advantage of the taxes before they become an issue.
Well, you absolutely have to do that. But I think most advisors are intuitively thinking down the road about how we're going to create income streams and how we're going to allocate their assets. They're intuitively thinking about that, and they're intuitively thinking about how am I growing my book of business, how am I growing my practice. They think about that stuff all the time. Well, in that process of being able to look forward, you can also look forward to what are the tax issues of your client going to be. We know when we bring a client in who's 60, his tax horizon is 30 years-ish.
Yep.
Versus a tax client from 70 and a tax client at 80. A client at 80, RMDs are less of an issue. I mean, they might not like them, but the runway is less time to take care of it. But a guy who's 55 coming into, you have all sorts of opportunities. And this is where we talked earlier. You're afraid, you're nervous, you don't know. But, like with my practice group that we teach these things, here's the 7 things you need to ask your clients at age 50 who are becoming clients about what their future is going to look like. Well, if you know the answers to those 7 things, right, bring those 7 things up. You'll be able to create a roadmap for tax purposes. Here's the 5 things you need to ask somebody at 70. This just the other day, I got a call from a podcast. It was actually wonderful. We got a podcast caller, and they wanted to know, she had a business that's worth 10 million. He has a business worth 4 million. And in our conversations, they have a lot of rental income that they don't need any income from the sale of those 2 assets, but they have no cost basis and they want to sell them. So we sat down with them. We're selling all 14 million, paying 0 taxes. They will continue to have those assets grow, income tax and estate tax free. And when they pass away, assets go to their kids with a step up in basis because they don't need the money. So it's those type of things that just by being in a group like mine, being in a group like Ed Slott, just having somebody there to help you with the tax aspects of things. You don't have to have a master's degree. You just have to be open to learning something new and expanding your knowledge base on how to approach your client. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, you will see your revenue grow exponentially. You will see the high net worth clients come in your door, and it's just an incredible flow of people coming in. And you want to be in the top 10? Do tax planning. I looked at the board recently here, your top 10, every single one of them do tax planning in some perspective. Every single one of them. And that's what it's about being a true holistic planner. You have to incorporate that. To be a true fiduciary, in my opinion, you have to bring that to the table. Stop allowing your clients to lose 20, 30, 40% of their revenue every year. That's stupid. Because if you do that, sooner or later, they're going to find me and I'm going to take your client from you. Why? Why put yourself in that position?
That's a good point right there. I have no rebuttal for that. What do you like? You mentioned an advisor when they're first trying to dip their toes into it and the online options and making it easy for estate planning or something like that. But when they want to get serious, do you like, having that, what I call like kind of a symbiotic relationship with a CPA down the road versus bringing someone on staff?
No, absolutely. I disagree. I don't like the idea. I mean, I think if you have to do it, if the only way you can accomplish it is to have those relationships, I think that's a last resort. I'd almost rather you not have those relationships, because anybody that has ever worked with an attorney, they're horrible referral sources. Anybody that's ever worked with a CPA, they're horrible referral sources. So you're sending your clients to them. I mean, I actually worked with a guy down in Florida, and he was sending his stuff to an attorney around the corner from him, and the client came back with the estate planning documents, and in the folder there was a referral system to some other group that this guy belonged to. Ooh. And I'm like, what the F? What the F? So I think the best thing you can do is bring them internally. Yeah. And I know that's a scary process, but the fact is that if you're willing to, if you have the courage and you're willing to step up and do it, you charge the clients a fee. And we have in my practice, I have a very simple story about why they pay this fee. And I'm telling you now, nobody ever balks at that fee because they recognize the value. Nobody ever complains about a fee if you can explain the value that you're bringing to the table. And that's true for the fee of the annuity you sold them, or the AUM fees, or whatever it is. If there's not enough perceived value, then they're going to balk at it regardless what the cost is. So in my firm, as I mentioned, we bill over $300,000 a year. A couple of the guys that I work with, they're billing $100,000, $75,000, $150,000, $200,000 a year in fees. That's more than enough to hire a CPA to bring it in the door. That's more than enough to hire an enrolled agent to come in the door. And that enrolled agent or that CPA, the beautiful thing about them, some of the most trusted people are those CPAs. The least trusted people are attorneys and financial advisors. I mean, insurance people, they think we're all bottom-dwelling, scum-sucking pigs, right? I mean, at least that's what the media tells us, right? Yeah. So, but the CPA is one of the most trusted advisors. So fine, bring one of the most trusted advisors into your practice and have him, every time you sit down with a client, that CPA is going to be part of the review process. That CPA is going to be part of the tax planning process. That CPA is going to affirm and reaffirm and confirm every single tax strategy you suggest to the client. And once they hear it from the CPA's mouth, it's gold. So why would you not bring them in the office? Why would you send them down the street? And the same thing with estate planning. My firm, yes, I'm an attorney, but you know what? I have literally hundreds and hundreds of clients from across the country. We do estate planning for all of them. I can't do the work, but we use those third-party services to do the simple, basic returns, the simple, basic estate planning. And for people that need the more advanced stuff, even in Maryland where I can practice law, I don't do the advanced stuff with them mostly, and this is the way I explained it to them, mostly because I don't do it every single day, and you don't want to be the guinea pig to see if I did it right on you. We
Yeah.
want to make sure we have somebody who this is all they do 24 hours a day. So it's a simple process, a simple conversation. You just have to have the courage to do it.
I'm curious to know how this makes you more marketable. Like it feels like an obvious thing, but like how does the tax component factor into what you can offer for seminars?
Well, think about that. My marketing is all about taxes. And how many seminars have that? I mean, how many they talk a little bit about it, but I know this is going to go up someplace in Impact's website or on YouTube, but if you go to their YouTube channel or their website and download, you can see actual tax planning workshops where, most guys are talking about, step ups and just simple stuff. The workshops we do get into some in-depth tax planning. And so when people are getting the invitation, it's not just, save taxes. It's like if you're a business owner and you want to minimize or reduce or avoid capital gain taxes, you need to attend. We're going to show you how to do it. I think it makes us more marketable again, because for those of you watching and listening to it, you think about your practice. And if the prospect that came to you sits down and talks to you and asks you for solutions, and you do whatever solutions you have, and then they come to me, keep it in mind that I can sell them the exact same annuities that you can. I can sell them exact mutual funds or ETFs or whatever product you're selling them as far as AUM goes. I can do the same thing. You can't do any tax planning. You can't do any tax strategies. You can't do their tax returns for them. You can't do their estate planning. You can't implement their estate plan. You don't do any of that. When they're just comparing values, I cost them $1,295 more than what you're doing. It's a no-brainer for them. They want that service, and they want it all under one house because they're tired of bouncing around from office to office and never knowing whether everything's being done correctly. It's like the quarterback just walking up to the line, having them snap from the ball, and the rest of the team has no idea what the play is. He's just going to say, "I'm going to do it when I'm ready,"
Yeah.
and just everybody go out, and I'll throw it to somebody. Well, that's a loser proposition, right?
Yeah.
Why would you put yourself in that position? Why would you put yourself in a disadvantage of competing against people like me that can bring the whole package to the table? Because you know what? Working with Impact, you can have the same thing. You can actually be that holistic advisor that you say you want to be, that you thought you want to be. The biggest obstacle again is you. You just have to put that one step forward and take that first step. Once you take that first step, it's easy. It really is easy.
We're getting a lot of good stuff here. I wanted to kind of lob an idea, and you tell me kind of how you would position it towards a client. But when it comes to RMDs, okay, you're going to take a huge hit on RMDs unless you can get creative and find a solution. Well, one thing charitable donations, that becomes a good opportunity for you. So how would you approach something like that, or what opportunities do you see when it comes to minimizing RMDs?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, so if you're normally charitable minded, doing QCDs, right? I think that's a great idea, and it's not just RMDs, right? Because you can do it at 70, right? At 7.5, you can start taking money out of it, and this again goes back to the difference between a financial advisor who might have heard of QCDs and talking to them about you should do Roth conversions. Well, for us, I'm dealing with a very large client in Michigan right now, and she had gone to her CPA and he had talked to her about QCDs and Roth conversions, and talked to CPA and her financial advisor, and they came up with this strategy. And part of it included doing Roth conversions. And when she sat down with me, I said, "Well, why are you doing Roth conversions?" And she said, "Well, because then the money will be tax-free." And I said, "But you don't need that money from your IRA, from your 401k. You're taking it because you're being forced to, right?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, and you don't need it because your pension and Social Security is as much as you want, right?" "Yes." "Well, then why not just do QCDs? Why pay tax and convert it? It's going to go to charity anyways." 30% of her estate was going to charity, and that fit perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But why do an RMD at all? I mean, why do a Roth conversion at all? We can just earmark your 401k to charity. That'll be your charitable donation that was going to go anyways, and you just do your QCDs. And you know what? Right around the time she was probably about 87, 88, that's when we probably would be exceeding the 100,000 you can do right now. All right, fine. But I've solved a problem without her paying a boatload of taxes today. for her 25 years from now, she's going to have a little bit of a tax problem from RMDs, and I'm not even positive she'll have that based upon what the tax rules are down the road. So, because it's entirely possible they increase them. And quite frankly, the reason why you hire me in the first place is every time they change those stupid tax rules, Secure Act 1.0 and 2.0, every time they change the tax rules, my job is to figure out solutions to them. And I'm telling you what, every time they change the tax rules, I get more clients because it becomes more convoluted. It's attorneys and CPAs that are making up these rules. I mean, it comes from Congress, but they're the ones who make it convoluted because they want to keep a job. My job is to figure out how to finesse and wiggle my way around all these stupid rules they come up with. It's a straightforward process. I guess to answer your questions, I love using QCDs as a RMD alternative. Don't have to wait, but it should be a part of a strategic plan, just not arbitrarily done.
Do you find that different markets have different opportunities? And the one that what stood out to me was I used to live in Austin, Texas, and there's lots of startups, and you would have more maybe ESOP opportunities or something along those lines. Do you find that an advisor needs to look at their market and say, hey, there's a really good opportunity from a tax perspective because you're a hotbed for startups or
yeah.
something like
I
that?
get the question. So I think if you want to have a niche market that you can tap into,
Yeah.
certainly understanding more about ESOPs or understanding more about business sales and valuations and how to structure those. If that's going to be your target market, absolutely. In my practice, I don't narrow it down that specifically.
Okay.
We talk about business ownership, and then we talk about just people with investments. So those are kind of the two broad markets. But the fact is that, and this goes back to what we talked about earlier, I know enough about ESOPs to be dangerous, but I certainly couldn't give formal advice on it. But if somebody came to me and said, let's talk about, I've heard about this ESOP thing, should we do it? I know enough to have a brief conversation about it and give them some food for thought. And then I can go do my research on what exactly they need to do, or I can come to somebody else that I know that knows more about ESOPs than I do. And I have a TPA that I work with that I can go to and say, okay, what do I need to tell this guy? But the most important part is I knew enough to have an intelligent conversation to be able to feed him some information to make him think about whether this makes sense or not, that he then comes back to me again. And that's the important part about tax planning. You don't have to have a master's degree. You just have to be one paragraph ahead.
Yeah, we keep mentioning what we talked about earlier. We sat down and accidentally did a podcast because we just got rolling. And one thing that you said that really stood out to me was if you get asked that question and maybe you don't know an incredible amount on it, a little bit, enough to be dangerous, maybe not, and saying to a client, that's a great question, let me do some homework.
Well, and because the tax laws do change every single year. Some knucklehead in Congress comes up with a new rule. And so it is a legitimate answer to say, you know what, that's a great question. Generally speaking, here's what we would do, but your situation, it's a little bit unique, so I want to do a little bit more research before I give you a definitive answer. But here's the things we need to think about in the meantime. You have said something that's truthful. You have let them know that you're knowledgeable about it. You have said, I'm knowledgeable about it, but I want to double check what I know about it to make sure I'm giving you the best advice I can. That's a wonderful thing. Clients want to hear that. They don't want to hear some BS that made up, because as soon as you start rambling, which you do when you don't know. I mean, most people ramble when they don't know. As soon as you start rambling or you start repeating yourself, they know you're full of crap. And they sense it, they fear it, and they can smell it on you too. When you know you're full of crap and you're trying to explain,
you start sweating.
Right, they can see it. So I think it's a very legitimate response. I mean, not the same, but analogy is when people are coming aboard with us, and we're doing our presentation to them, and they know that there's an annuity involved, right? Which annuity are you going to use? Well, my answer is always the same. Are you signing today? If you sign today, I can go tell you what the annuity is. But if you sign 2 weeks from now, it's not going to be the annuity I use today, because every week there's a new annuity out there with something better, and I'm just going to find the best one for you at the time. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to sign today, I'll tell you which annuity it is, but I'm not ready to sign you today. So when you're ready to make the decision that you're coming aboard, I can find you the right annuity then, and we'll implement it. We'll get the annuity as we implement in the plan. And that's the same thing in the tax conversation. You don't have to know everything. You have to know enough to be intelligent, and what you don't know, you can always lead with what you just said. Listen, I think that's a great question. Here's generally how the rule works. QCDs are a great idea, but here's generically how the rule works. I want to do a little research to make sure I got it right for how it's going to apply to you. And then you go call somebody like me. You know, if you're with Impact, you call somebody like me. You go call your CPA friend. You go call a TPA. Heck, I'm getting ready to sign up for this program that I don't need because they do some tax strategies. I want to see what they're doing with them with limited partnerships. But that's what they're going to do. And I'm going to pay for that, so I have that knowledge. But that's the type of knowledge you can do the same thing, right? You don't have to join Impact. You don't have to join my program to get tax knowledge. When somebody asks you a question, go do a continue. Every single state has some sort of tax CPA affiliation, some sort of program that does continuing education. And I promise you, you can go sign up for their continuing education class and go take a class on whatever specific subject you want to have, and they'll tell you exactly what the rules are. And that way you can have an intelligent conversation. And you don't have to implement it. You can go back to the guy who taught the class and say, hey, I need somebody to do this in my state. You know, somebody who will do this for my clients. Yeah, I don't write charitable remainder trusts. I don't do that stuff, but we do them all the time. I go find that I have a guy that I do them with. I know enough to talk about them, but you know what? I know enough to be dangerous, but I know more than you know. And that's about a paragraph.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Impactful Conversations. We hope you picked up on something, and we hope you stick around. Like and subscribe to stay up on the latest content from our YouTube channel. We've got house rules if maybe your marketing needs a boost, or if you need some more creative ways to talk to clients and prospects. Selling with Stories can be a great resource for that as well. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.